Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today's video we are continuing down the list of the 50 best horror movies that you've never seen, with number 44 for us, but number 14 on the list, Alone with Her. Alone with Her came out in 2006 and was written and directed by Eric Nicholas. As you may or may not have noticed, I'm not going in chronological order for the movies I'm doing on this list, but this is the first one I'm doing that's like way further down on the list. And the reason being is because this movie genuinely upset me in a way that isn't a fun horror movie upsetting, but real life upsetting, and we'll get to that later. So if you were thinking to yourself, why did we go from like up in the 40s to suddenly we're in the 14s, that's why. I do genuinely try to rewatch the movies I talk about on my channel. This list aside, anytime I talk about a movie, I do try to watch it before I talk about it so I can have it fresh in my head. But this movie, I had no intentions of pre-watching. I've seen it once and I don't want to see it again. So I decided to just go ahead and kind of get it out of the way, I guess you could say, and just sort of give my thoughts now that I've had time to reflect on it, but I'm still not interested in re-watching it. And for a quick synopsis of the movie, it's about a tech-savvy man named Doug who goes around stalking women. He hides hidden cameras in bags and goes to places like the beach or coffee shops and takes videos of women, usually trying to get like under the skirt shots. Or if he's at the beach, he'll like zoom in on their butts, stuff like that. And the entire movie is shot through the perspective of Doug's security cameras and like hidden camera footage. And while Doug is out with one of his bags with a hidden camera in it, he spots a girl named Amy who he becomes obsessed with and starts to follow her around. He basically just stalks her to figure out her schedule, finds out that she goes to this coffee shop a lot, happens to be there one day. He like looks in her car window to see what CDs she has, to like talk about music with her, and then once he gets a little bit more friendly, he finds out that she's going away to visit her family for a weekend, so he goes to her house and breaks in to install hidden cameras. And the entire rest of the movie is then shot through the hidden cameras that he has in her apartment. He watches her go on dates, have friends over. He'll call her and watch her on the video cameras while he's talking to her on the phone. So the movie is shot similarly to movies such as Paranormal Activity or The Blair Witch Project, where it's like not necessarily found footage, but footage that was shot by an amateur. And the shots do range back and forth from color to black and white depending on the quality of the camera that Doug is using. But eventually Doug becomes obsessed with Amy and really wants to get her to be in love with him. He like lets her dog loose on purpose, so she has to go out and try to find her dog. He puts broken glass on the floor in her apartment, so she cuts her foot and has to call him to come help her. He purposely makes her lose her job, and when the best friend catches on to what Doug is doing, he does eventually kill her as well, being nervous that she'll tell Amy about everything. And the movie ends with Doug comforting Amy after the death of her best friend, trying to make it seem like he wasn't the one that killed her, and they start to fool around a little bit, and they kind of just, it's a little bit too awkward. He can't get an erection, and then whenever he does, she's like, I'm really sorry, I don't really see you in a sexual way, we're really just good friends, I don't want to hurt your feelings. And this just enrages him, and he starts to attack her, and it's while attacking her he lets slip something that he couldn't have known had he not been watching her, and she starts to catch on to the fact that Doug has been watching her this whole time, and she starts to find the cameras in her house, and out of fear of being caught, Doug does end up murdering her. And I'll go ahead and get this out of the way now. The reason I wanted to do this movie so soon on the list, and the reason I didn't want to rewatch it, is, as I said, it was very upsetting for me. When I did watch this, I was watching it by myself, and when my boyfriend came home, he found me on the couch just in tears. I was so genuinely upset and disgusted by watching this movie. And now that I've had time to like reflect on it, I think that just shows the effectiveness of this movie and shows how well done it is, because it's so real. I've talked about it before. There's like fun horror and then like not fun horror. Not fun horror would be stuff like rape and murder of women, and then like fun horror is like the ridiculous stuff. You know, like Freddy and Jason and all of our beloved slashers are fun horror, and then movies like this are not, and mainly because it's so real. While effects in horror movies have gotten so good it's hard to tell what's real and what's fake, it's usually the storyline that gives you just enough of unbelievability that you aren't as scared as you could be. But something like this is genuinely terrifying and an actual issue that women are seeing today. And it's especially scary for someone like me who has been followed out of parking lots. I've had men park their cars behind mine so I can't pull out, so I have to talk to them. I've had to hide myself in the dressing rooms at stores because I'm getting followed by creepy men. I've had lots of situations where I feel unsafe and genuinely worried that I'm going to be either like kidnapped, raped, or murdered. And my genuine biggest fear in life is being captured, kidnapped, raped, murdered, or sold for sex trafficking, which to maybe a lot of male viewers isn't as pressing of an issue for them. But as a girl who has been followed to her car, I've had men look me dead in the eyes and tell me I don't want to be ignored. And that's horrifying, especially when you're by yourself. And a lot of times I get approached when I'm by myself out grocery shopping. So a movie like this is extra scary for someone like me because it's like, well, what if that guy didn't just leave me alone after I said no? What if he followed my car and found out where I lived? And what if he did something like this? And when this movie was shot in 2006, electronic monitoring like this was seen in 1 out of every 13 stalker cases. And now thinking about it in 2020, there are so many different ways that you can do surveillance. You can buy surveillance cameras that are disguised as pretty much any object: clocks, smoke alarms, lamps, outlets, stuff like that. And you can buy that on Amazon. So it's very, very plausible for someone to break into your house, replace common day items with cameras, and you'll have no idea. And while there's still like 2 or 3 movies on this list that I haven't seen, from what I have seen, this movie has the scariest concept out of all of them because of the realism behind it. And to male audience, it might not be as scary as it is to female audience because men don't tend to have the same interactions as women do. And that is something Eric Nichols has touched on, is he wanted to make a horror movie that was realistic and genuine and something that wasn't really done before. And I think this was really successful in that case, especially because all the scenes were shot through the spy cameras that Doug set up, so we're seeing things through Doug's eyes. And the ability to make seamless transitions throughout the movie through spy cameras is unnerving as equally as it is fascinating, because while it's amazing that he was able to string together all these different shots from different spy cameras to make a cohesive movie, it's terrifying that he could do that with just spy cameras. And I didn't see anywhere whether or not all of the footage from the film was shot on spy cameras or if it was just produced to look that way. But Eric definitely got his idea from all the different common day items that you can purchase that have cameras inside of them. And you also get to see the gradual progression of Doug slowly ruining Amy's life. And because you're watching it through his eyes, you almost want to just like scream out to Amy when they're together to just like be so careful around this guy. He's not a good person. Doug was actually played by Colin Hanks, which is Tom Hanks' son. He's done a ton of stuff, especially recently. He's been doing a lot of things, but this was one of the more like beginning projects, I guess you could say, that he was a part of. He was really excited to be a part of it and to be a part of a project that was going to push the boundaries in the sense of what is like suspense and horror. And he plays that part so perfectly because he plays a very casual looking, just like kind of nerdy, maybe tech savvy guy. And the underlying creepiness is there, but he only shows it in certain ways. So the acting in general in this movie is really, really well done. The dialogue's a little bit sketchy in some places, like we're in the coffee shop. It's a little bit awkward and weird, but I mean, when you meet someone for the first time, especially as a girl, when a guy approaches you, you're a little bit awkward and weird, especially if there's not like an instant connection or an instant attraction to each other. Someone usually is a little bit more awkward in the conversation, and you see that in this film. So some of the beginning scenes, the dialogue's a little bit rough, and a little bit uninventive in the sense of like it's nothing groundbreaking or super progressive to the story, but you get it in the sense of building the relationship between Doug and Amy. And I'll be honest, as far as like behind the scenes and extra information, there really isn't much on this movie. IMDb is my go-to to just see like the basic facts about a movie, and they had like 2, I think. And I tried a couple of like review sites and, movie synopsis sites, even like Rotten Tomatoes, and it was like the summary given on all these websites are almost completely identical, and there really wasn't a lot of extra information that I could find. I don't have the movie on DVD. I didn't really see any like special features. I did rewatch the part in the 50 Best Horror Movies You've Never Seen documentary about this movie, and Eric Nichols is actually one of the people who talks about it, so it was cool to see his perspective, but it's only like a 2-minute clip. So it didn't give me like a ton of information to go off of. I think the rough budget I've been able to kind of like map out was about $1 million. The movie was in theaters for a very short amount of time. There wasn't really like a big release about it or anything like that. It was kind of more of a project versus a big premiere. And even like things like the special effects are kept to a bare minimum in this movie. We see Amy cut her foot on the glass that Doug leaves in the apartment. She's very bloody and gross. And we see Doug push Amy's friend down the set of wet stairs whenever she catches on to what Doug is doing. But even that isn't super gory. I think it just like breaks her neck or something. But again, this movie isn't about like traditional horror. And it is considered more of a suspense. A lot of what I could find really categorized as more of like a suspense thriller. And I think its Rotten Tomatoes score was like 62%. And I had like 3 stars on IMDb. So it just seems to be kind of like an average movie to people, which is fair, I would say. It can be kind of boring at times to just watch someone on surveillance cameras. I know some people don't like the whole found footage concept for movies. That was like a big hit things like Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity took. But this movie does have very distinctive and memorable scenes. I haven't watched it since probably October of 2018, and I can still see certain scenes and hear certain phrases so clearly in my mind that it still makes me kind of like look around my shower, you know, and think like, is someone watching me? I still think about this movie to this day, and I only watched it once. So I think that alone can kind of show you the impactfulness of a movie like this, maybe especially now more than in 2006 when technology like this was still up and coming. But now, just because of the accessibility that we have, and especially with things like GPS, having your phone on you all the time, they're starting to see with stalking cases, they're more and more technologically based. People hacking into people's personal information, hacking into their phone, even being able to hack into the webcam of their computer and watch them as they work on their computer. So this is definitely becoming more and more of a prevalent issue in the world, especially as technology is growing. So I would honestly say this movie is kind of ahead of its time in that sense, because I don't think I would have had the same reaction in 2006 as I do now in 2020. And that's mainly because I've had more experiences with men doing stuff that's kind of unsettling, and I also have a better understanding of how easy it is to implant security cameras into people's homes. Even something as simple as a GPS tracking bug can be easily placed onto your car without you knowing that someone could just follow you home one day. So as far as like my paranoia about my greatest fear of getting kidnapped, raped, or sex trafficked, this didn't help, which is why I think I had such an emotional reaction to it. Like I said, my boyfriend came home and I was in tears, like genuinely upset at watching this movie. I still did finish it because I felt like I had to. A movie that's getting this much of an emotion out of me has to be worth finishing. And it is a little bit predictable at the end because Doug does end up murdering Amy out of frustration and anger. And you see that in a lot of movies with domestic violence where the husband takes it too far and kills the wife. So that wasn't like super surprising. But I did find out that there is an alternate ending to this movie where Amy does end up besting Doug and hitting him over the head and knocking him out. To which the movie ends with Amy scouring her apartment for hidden cameras and just kind of having like a mental breakdown, realizing how many cameras he had hidden in her house. But the ending we get is the unfortunate one where Amy is murdered by Doug. And honestly, I can't 100% remember if he strips all the cameras out of her apartment. I don't see why he wouldn't after he killed her, because then no one knows that he was there, or if he believes they're that well hidden that no one would know. But the movie ends with him, another shot of him with his bag with the security camera in it, and he's walking around and he sees a girl walking by herself and he starts to follow her. So the movie ends with you realizing he hasn't learned his lesson, he's about to go stalk and probably end up killing another girl. Which then leads you to the question of how many times has he done this? Was Amy the first one he put cameras in her house? Because we do see him going to the tech store to get more cameras, so I don't really know if Amy was the first person he ever did this with, or if she was just another one of his victims. The movie does a good job in that sense of he seems almost too good at what he's doing to this be his first time, but he's also a little bit unprepared in certain situations and doesn't know how to react whenever she starts to kind of figure things out. Like, the reason he murders the best friend is because he's saying that he's from, I believe, like, San Francisco. So she starts asking him about places in San Francisco that don't exist, and he's just going along with it because he doesn't realize what she's doing. And then she starts to tell Amy, like, this guy's lying to you, he is just trying to manipulate you. At this point, the best friend doesn't know about the security cameras either, but she's just kind of warning Amy that this guy's lying, so, like, maybe you should watch out. And then that's when Doug lets out the dog ends up running away. So they're all out looking for the dog, and Doug sneaks up on the best friend. It's like raining, and she's confronts him and is like, you know, I know that you're bullshitting and I know that you're lying to Amy and I don't know who you are, but like, you need to back off. And he pushes her down a set of like stone steps in the rain and ends up killing her. But of course, no one knows that he's there other than him and his camera. So when he goes back to Amy, he tells her she must have slipped and fallen. It was rainy and wet outside. And now Amy's living with the guilt, thinking that, oh my God, my best friend was trying to find my dog and now she's dead. I inadvertently killed my best friend, not knowing that Doug's the one that released the dog and Doug's the one that killed her best friend. So you get that frustration with Doug knowing that he's sabotaging Amy's life, and Amy didn't deserve any of it because, again, he just saw her like at the park and followed her home one day. All in all, I do think this is a really, really well done movie. As I said, I think it resonates more now than ever, especially with all the sex trafficking cases we're seeing in the US now, all the women who are getting kidnapped and stolen, and just people being stalked and recorded. You know, there's hotel rooms that have been found with hidden cameras in them. It's becoming such a prevalent issue in our world, and I think that's why I had such a visceral reaction to watching this movie. And as I said earlier, it is one of the only movies that is real life scary, because the scariest things in the world are other people. And this movie showcases how something as simple as a tech-savvy guy can become a worst nightmare. And for that reason, I'm going to say this movie absolutely deserves to be on the list. It is number 14, which I think is a good spot for it. While my list isn't in any certain order, I'm not ranking the movies, I do believe this movie deserves to be on the list, and I do believe it deserves its spot at number 14. It's an experimental movie, but a genuinely terrifying one at that, and I do encourage you guys to watch it if you haven't. If you have been ever stalked or had someone do anything like what Doug does to Amy, I would maybe advise against it, or at least have someone there with you, because I've only ever been like followed in parking lots and it got me in tears. So I can't speak for anyone who's actually had something like that happen to them, but just be mindful that that's what this movie revolves around. But if you guys have watched it, let me know what you think. You can leave a comment down below or head over to my Instagram, What the Horror. I'll be making a post about this video as well. I'm interested to see what you guys think about whether or not this movie deserves to be on the list, because it is more suspense and thriller than it is horror, and it is a different style of horror than what we've seen previously on this list. There's nothing funny about this movie in my opinion, and there aren't many like comic relief moments, so it can be kind of a hard movie to get through in that sense, but I'm interested to see what you guys think about it either way. And I thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more videos. I put out new videos every Friday, and until next time, stay spooky.